You are listening to CFIS 93.1 FM, and this is Stump the Pastor. I'm your host, Ellis Wedel. I'm the pastor at Hartland Baptist Church in Prince George, and I have with me today in the studio a couple of my close friends, one by the name of Crystal Campbell. Hello, Crystal.
Hi, nice to be here, Ellis.
Awesome.
Thanks for the invite.
Oh, no problem. Also, we have Kyle Dagg with us.
Hello.
Hello, Kyle. I wanted to, before we went into answering the question for today, I wanted to talk a little bit about what Stump the Pastor is about. About 6 years ago at my church, I wanted to do a Bible study at the church that would allow people to want to be a part of it. Oftentimes, people feel like they're either obligated to go or are sometimes bored to death when they come to one of the studies. And so I wanted to do something that would be a little bit more exciting. So we started what was called Stump the Pastor. And Stump the Pastor, the essence of it was that people in the church or outside the church could ask any question that they wanted of me, the pastor, and then I would choose one of those questions and we would go through it on a Wednesday night. So it became a very popular time in the church. I probably had more students in that class than any other class that I've ever done. So I kind of got to thinking and wondering, there's got to be other people that have questions about the Bible or about Christianity. So thus, we have Stump the Pastor on the radio. And the intention is that you guys, the listeners, will be the ones who make up what the show is about. You're going to be the ones who give us the questions, and every week we're going to pick one and we're going to tackle that question and try and answer it for you. So today we have a question that is coming from one of the ones that we did in the church a while ago. The reason for that is because this is our first show. We haven't yet got anybody who's sent in any questions. So the question for today is this: if Christianity is supposed to make us more loving and accepting people, why are there so many different denominations that don't seem to get along with one another? And so just so that everybody who's out there understands the question, I mean, some of you may not know what a denomination is, but within the Christian church, there are many different types of churches. There are different groups of churches. And so you have, like, for instance, the Baptist Church, you have the Alliance Church, you have the Evangelical Free Church, you have the Mennonite Church. You have many different denominations. If I left yours out, it's not on purpose, so please don't get upset at me. But those are all what we call denominations. And so they're asking, if the Bible tells us we're supposed to be loving and caring, then why don't these denominations seem to get along with one another? And I'm just going to ask you guys, first of all, do you think the question is fair?
I think it's fair. I think one of the most disruptive and hard to deal with things is the fact that as Christians, we don't do a better job getting along, that we get so focused on the differences that we don't actually function together. Okay. So it's a fair question. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that.
What do you think are some of the things that cause these differences to happen?
People are different, so they have different ideas. They read things. One person reads the same thing as another person, but they understand it to be different, and even different understandings and meanings of words.
Okay. I'm assuming just before you go, Crystal, I'm just assuming that you're talking specifically about the Bible now when you talk about differences that they have in reading and interpreting?
Yeah, I would say the Bible, or like church dogmas as well.
Okay.
Yeah. As well as traditions. We all have different traditions. So, for instance, an Anglican church or a United Church member may find that the traditions in a Baptist church are slightly disorienting, the same way that a Lutheran might in coming to one of our churches. And I think that when we bump into those differences, either theologically, how we read the Bible or how we practice our beliefs, it does cause us discomfort. And because we don't know what to do with that discomfort, we put up walls. And that's really unfortunate.
Now, for those who are out there listening who have never been in a church before, what are some of the things that would be different between those different churches? Like when you talk about say a Baptist going to a Pentecostal church, or a Pentecostal person going to a mainstream church, what would be the differences there?
Some of the differences to me that I think of as being very minor because of where I'm at, but for some people it's very major. Some churches, you raise your hands when you sing. Some churches you don't. Some churches you stay seated unless you're asked to stand. Some people you can stand, or some churches you can stand when you want. And some churches interpret how people should worship in the church differently. Some people preach differently. It's hard to actually describe in a way that someone who's not used to church would be able to understand. So I feel like I'm falling short in that. Kyle, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, actually, this just came up not that long ago. There's a lot of superficial differences too. Like somebody came and said, "I noticed." Last time I was at a church, there was pictures everywhere. The walls were painted, and there's no paintings here. And I mean, there's not really any pictures in the sanctuary, and so it's very plain. Whereas some churches, like Catholic churches, are famous for their stained glass windows, and everything in it is art. And some churches are very bare bones. Some churches are in a school.
And I think one thing that we all kind of understand is that our space helps show who we are. So as a Baptist church, we tend to not have pictures. It's part of our background that we didn't, as the early beginners, the Anabaptists, didn't enjoy or want to see the pictures. They felt it was idolatrous, that it was worshiping something other than God. So for someone coming from a place of the Baptist background, going into a Catholic church can be very strange when it's one that has a lot of artwork, because when there's a lot of artwork, it becomes a matter then of internally arguing with yourself about, is this idolatry? Isn't this idolatry? And yeah, it can be really disruptive.
Okay. So do you think, just on that same note, do you think that some of these things are changing? Do you think some of these perceptions are changing, or do you think they're getting worse in the church?
I think some of it is changing. I would say that in our church it is. We actually have a couple artists in the church, and we actually have pictures showing up on walls. Not in the sanctuary yet, but I'm holding my breath in a way, because I really would love to see some artwork up.
Okay.
So I think with the younger generation, denominational lines are starting to get blurred as well. I mean, it's less about method of practice. And I mean, if you're raised in a certain way of worship, then you're like, well, this is what I need to see. But if you're not, and you're just coming into it as somebody new to a church, and you're like, well, I just want to learn, I want to know more about this, then it's, those other things aren't so important. And so it's like, well, should I go to a Baptist church? Should I go to a Pentecostal? What's the difference? And when it comes down to it, because there are the similarities between the churches, those are the key issues anyway. So when you go to a church that deals with the key issues, then the side stuff is less important anyway.
Okay. We're going to talk a little bit more about that essentials versus non-essentials a little bit later as we go through this. But do you think that this question might not be a question in a little while? I mean, if younger people growing up in the church aren't really looking at denominations in the way that they have in the past, there's not those distinctions as they used to be. Do you think that this is just going to, this question's going to be moot pretty soon?
Wouldn't that be nice? No, I don't.
Okay.
I think we're too human. We get focused on ourselves and on our little groups really easily, and each individual is on their own path, and so it's good that we have people who are reaching that point, and that's wonderful. But there are then people who are going to be coming out of a place where they've had a lot of broad understanding, and they're going to want to cling to the narrow understanding because it helps them feel secure. So I don't know that it will ever be a completely moot issue. I hope we'll get more and more loving and gracious as we deal with it.
Okay. You said that we're too human. When you say that we're too human, or when you use that word human, what are some of the things you're talking about? Like what are some of the I assume that you're describing some character traits that we have.
Yeah.
So what are some of those character traits that we have that are human?
Well, the Bible calls it sin. That's the easiest way. And the fact that as humans, we want it our way. We will look for our way first, and we will tend to follow what we see as best for us. And the word sin is so loaded for a lot of people. Really, it's describing... this is the non-complicated description. It's describing a level of selfishness that gets in the way of everything that we're doing. And that would be what I think we won't ever get completely around, that selfishness.
Okay. Do you want to add anything to that, Kyle? No.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I was just thinking like specifically about some of these things. Like if we look at certain traits, and I would probably put things like pride into that. Where we all have a certain amount of pride, and we want things done. When you say want them done our way, that's a pride issue. It has to be my way or no way. And the things like fear. Do you want to add to that?
Well, I did actually. I'm glad that you just said fear, because I think a lot of it stems from the fact that we are generally very afraid. And because we're not reaching out in the way that we should to God to answer that, we reach to ourselves and we try to solve it all ourselves and try to make ourselves comfortable and meet those needs ourselves. And the fear is huge, because if Kyle disagrees with me on something and he decides to get mad about it, then what do I do? And so I'll put up walls and I'll try to not disagree. And for those listening, Kyle and I are good friends, so he's smiling and trying not to laugh too audibly into the mic at the moment.
Okay. What I hear you saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear you saying is that Christians aren't perfect.
Amen. Not perfect.
Kyle, do you agree with that?
I believe that all other Christians are imperfect, yes.
Wow. So here we are on a radio broadcast as a Christian denomination at a Christian show, talking about the fact that Christians aren't perfect. That's unbelievable, isn't it?
We are seriously messed up people.
Wow.
We are. We all have problems. We all have issues that we're dealing with, and we're all just trying to learn to walk in love. Some with a lot of success. Those are the people that I look up to. Some of us with less. I look in the mirror for that one.
Well, here we go now. We're into the crux of the question, and the question being, if the Bible tells us that we're supposed to be loving and accepting, why are we so messed up?
Any thoughts, Kyle?
Because it's a goal. It's not a starting point.
Oh, that's interesting. Explain slightly more.
We're all people. I know there are some Christians who like to believe that we're a higher class of people, but we really aren't. We start out at the same spots. Yeah. We go through the same struggles. Our perspective on the struggles is different, and the ways that we manage our issues are different. But we still have our own personalities to contend with. And if you and I don't get along, then that's something that you and I have to work through. So at first it's not going to be pleasant, and we're going to quarrel and then probably avoid and then find some thing that gives us a common interest and then work on that, and then eventually things develop. So it's like that with everybody.
I think the denominations just take those issues onto a much bigger, more publicly visible scope. It's the same thing that happens in any group. It's just that there's an expectation in the church and definitely outside the church that somehow Christians are not going to do that. And we're human. We're working through our mess ups and trying to let God do the work in us so that we won't do the same things again.
Yeah, I think when I was growing up, I think the generation before us and even the generation before that, when the world started going, why aren't you more like the Bible? Their way of handling that was, let's portray to the world that we are like the Bible. And so they would put on masks and, figuratively speaking, and they would try to act around the world like the Bible was telling them they should be acting. And what we're saying today is that, we're tired of the mask, basically, and we want to let people know that we're not any different than they are. The only difference is that we're trying to attain to what the Bible tells us we should be doing, which is a very difficult thing in life if anyone's tried to do it.
And I think one of the things that helps with that is, and this is hard to explain, in many religions, the work is the goal. So you work to be better, and that is the goal. For me, and I know for the Christians that I am close to, so Ellis, Kyle, my husband, the other people that are in my life, for us, the work is not actually the goal. The work doesn't accomplish anything between me and God, but the work hopefully reflects that God is doing something in my life.
Right.
And that makes it hard, because then if I'm doing that work for the wrong reason, then I'm actually working in me, and it's selfish. If I'm doing it for the right reason, then it actually can be God working through me.
Right. Well, that's a big thing. I think we just got out into the open that maybe a lot of people haven't heard before, but I think it's good that we let people know that that's the case, that we're normal people struggling with normal things.
I think too, for people listening, that there are people in the church who aren't ready to necessarily even acknowledge that we're messed up, that our churches are messed up, that we don't have it all down. Some people find it hard to look at the brokenness that we have, because it's really hard to see that brokenness and realize that, yes, God is going to do something through it, as opposed to seeing the brokenness and thinking that we've failed somehow.
Yeah, well, I mean, in saying that we're messed up, we're not. It's interesting, because normally that would be something that would drive people away, probably, or I would think the world would be going, well, I don't want to go to a place that's all messed up. And we're looking at it and going, that should be something that draws people to it, because we're the same as they are. You know, we're still we're struggling with the same things they are, and if they have concerns or problems, they can come to a place where there's other people who have concerns and problems and are trying to deal with those problems and concerns in a healthy and godly way.
Yeah, and I think too that one of the challenges, and I'm just thinking of the very old song, Jesus is the answer for the world today, which sounds so corny to me, but it's also really true. Jesus is the answer, and I think that is what Christians bring to the table, is what Christ has done.
Okay. Well, I want to address one answer to this question, and for those of you who may have forgot, the question is all about if Christianity is supposed to be loving, making people loving and accepting people, then why does it seem like denominations don't seem to get along with one another? And one of the things I want to bring in that we haven't really talked a lot about is a historical issue. And that historical issue is that what happened at the Reformation that caused some of this to happen. So let's just go over a little bit of history. I'll talk to you a little bit about it, then you can give your comments as you want. But when the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church separated during the Reformation in the 16th century, one of the main issues was that Protestants believed, Martin Luther, who was one of the first starters of the Reformation, believed that every Christian should have a Bible in their hands. Up until that time, it was only the high up priests and clerics that had Bibles, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that a lot of it was in Latin or other languages that people couldn't read anyway. But when the printing press came along, Martin Luther and this whole idea of getting the Bible out to other people became a reality. And so Martin Luther said everybody should have a Bible because they should be able to look at it and interpret it as they want. The Catholic Church, though, had a fear with regard to this. And the fear was if everybody got a Bible, everybody would start interpreting that Bible in different ways. And it would cause divisions in the church. Instead of having particular people interpreting it for other people and allowing it to all be on the same page, now everybody's looking at it and they're all coming up with strange and wonderful ideas. So they were afraid that it was going to cause divisions. The Protestant Church agreed that this likely would be the case, but felt that it was worth it because God spoke in and through all believers, not just through the clerics and the priests. Long story short, what the Catholics feared was going to happen is exactly what happened. Many denominations were formed. A lot of people got the Bible. They started interpreting it their own way. Many denominations were formed, and each group started interpreting the Bible slightly different than the others. It's important to note, however, that while there are many different Christian churches today, the vast majority of differences center around non-essential issues. And they really have nothing to do with our salvation or how we come to be saved and go to heaven one day. Those non-essential issues include things like baptism. Now, let's talk a little bit about baptism. What are the different forms of baptism within the church?
Sprinkling.
Dunking.
Sprinkling and dunking.
Pouring?
Yeah.
Some pouring, yeah.
Infant versus adults.
Right. That's a big one. So now we have, in the Bible, verses related to baptism, saying that we should be baptized. But each person who's reading those verses are reading them slightly different, and some of them are baptizing babies. Some are saying that only adults can be baptized. Some are saying that you can be baptized by sprinkling water on a person. Others were saying that no, you have to be immersed in the water. Others saying, well, no, you can pour it on somebody. And so now, because there's different opinions, there's divisions, right? It's causing people to think differently about that issue.
I think one of the things, too, is that a lot of the time we talk about this as being a non-essential, in the sense that we know we have an understanding of baptism, but we don't believe as a church that it's not deciding if you are in relationship with Christ. There are some churches with this particular issue who do actually believe that how you're baptized makes that much difference. So as much as we're choosing this, I think we're doing so within an evangelical context, where Mennonites, Alliance, E-Free, Baptist, we're mostly on the same page, as opposed to some churches for which this is a serious issue, and for them this is divisive because they would see it drastically different.
Right, that your salvation actually entails being baptized.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's an important thing to let people know as they listen to this show, that we're going to be coming from an evangelical Christian perspective. So make sure that you know that. Another thing that was something that we would consider to be a non-essential is something like the gifts of the Spirit and how those are displayed within the church. What are some of the issues surrounding the gifts of the Spirit?
Whether or not certain gifts exist now.
Okay.
There's some gifts that exist, some that passed away at the time of the apostles. That would be one of them.
When we talk about the gifts of the Spirit, what are we talking about? Like, what are some of the gifts of the Spirit? Does anybody know?
It's when we come to Christ, when we realize what He's done for us, we choose to live under His Lordship. God basically, through His Spirit, gives us... it's hard to explain it without using the actual words, a spiritual gift. It's almost like an ability, a special perk that we get in life that carries us through and that helps us to be able to help others.
Okay.
It's an outwardly focused thing rather than an inwardly focused thing.
So it's not a gift that's for us.
No,
in order for
others.
us to be happy. It's a gift for us to use to allow others to be able to have their needs met.
For example, I know someone who has what we call the gift of helps.
Okay.
And she can walk into any place, and sometimes this is personality, but with her, it's way beyond personality. She can walk into any place and see exactly what needs to be done to help the people there. I do not have that gift. I walk into a room, I will not see what needs to be done at all.
Right.
Complete blank for me. So that's one. Some people have the gift of hospitality, the gift of encouragement.
Gift of teaching, gift of preaching, gift of apostleship, gift of
exhortation, which is challenging people to a different part
prophecy,
in their life. Yeah.
Gift of tongues.
We better
interpretation of tongues.
Go back slightly to prophecy, because if there's non-Christians listening, they might think that you're going to tell that we're going to die on December the 21st this year. Yeah,
well, there was some of that in the Bible, right?
Yes.
And this is part of the issue between how people interpret it, because some people believe that there's still people who can do that. Mm-hmm. Some denominations do. Other denominations believe that gift is different than it was in the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. That this is a gift that doesn't tell the future. It's a gift that basically is somebody sharing with others what God is saying directly to them, basically.
Yeah.
What else would be a non-essential? Predestination versus free will.
Oh, that's not even...
There's a non-essential, right?
Right.
It is.
Because salvation, regardless of how you think the salvation comes, salvation's salvation. So we're saved one way or, regardless.
And this is actually an issue that I've really been fighting over internally for a long time, and both these people sitting with me are chuckling about this a little bit. One of the nice things is that some of these non-essentials, once you think them through, no matter which one you pick, we're still in the same boat. We still have to make, for instance, with this issue, we still have to make decisions on a daily basis. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's lovely to know, too, I don't have the answer on that one.
Well, so those things we can have differences of opinion on with regard to the church. It doesn't really matter. But all churches today, what we want the people out there to hear today, and hear this above all the other stuff that we may be saying, all Christian churches today agree, as far as evangelical churches, agree on the essentials of the faith, or those things that are essential for salvation. So while there are a lot of different Christian denominations, we all agree on the central pillars of our faith. That's what we would call them. These essentials would include things like the Trinity, that we believe that we serve one God who is three people. I mean, now this is a hard thing for probably people listening out there to hear and understand what it is. We as Christians don't understand how it works, but we believe the Bible says it. And so here we have one God who is three people. We all agree on who Jesus is, that he was God's son, that he was sent to earth to die on a cross for us, and was resurrected and allowed us to be able to get rid of our sin that way.
And let's go back just one step further, because the term God's son is misinterpreted by people sometimes when we use it.
Right.
We don't mean son as in a separate being. We mean the physical manifestation of Jesus. God is God, who is not God the Holy Spirit or God the Father, but is also God. They are all one in its essence and in that other word that I forget.
Right. So Jesus is, we believe Jesus is God.
Yes.
That he's one of those three persons that makes God up.
Yeah.
We also believe in the authority of the Bible. That the Bible is the rule, a book by which we need to guide our lives and decide whether things are good or bad. And also we believe in mankind's dilemma, that we're all in sin, and that the only way that we can deal with that is through what God did for us by sending his son. So understand in the end that yes, we have some differences. Those differences are not essential, but the essential things we agree on as far as the evangelical church is concerned. That is probably all that we have to say for today. So if you have a question for Stump the Pastor, we'd love for you to get a hold of us. Write in on our webpage or on our email and send in a question so that we can answer it for you. Tune in again at Sunday at 8:30. Because we would love to be able to hear from you, or let you hear us as we go on the air.
And Ellis, the email is?
The email is stumpthepastor@cfisfm.com. So there you go. Thank you very much.
Ellis Wedel is the pastor at Hartland's Baptist Church. If you have a biblical question you'd like to stump Pastor Wedel with, email stumpthepastor@cfisfm.com for your chance to win a prize.